a brand new episode of Identity Talk Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. If this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, we welcome you and we hope that you return for future episodes and amazing content. And if you are a returning viewer or listener of the podcast, we hope that today's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and insightful. So before we get to our main event today, I do need to share a few quick announcements. First and foremost, the school year is winding down, but that doesn't mean that you can't load up on your teacher swag for the next school year. So we have our Identity Talk Apparel shop, which features hoodies, shirts, accessories for different professionals within the education profession. So whether you're a classroom teacher, a paraprofessional, social studies, science, math teacher, or even a librarian, school librarian, we have it all for you in the shop. So make sure you check out our shop at teespring.com/stores/the-identity-talk-apparel-shop for our listeners. And finally, if you are a teacher who's looking for a professional development to do for the upcoming summer going into next school year, we have our self-paced Shaping the Teacher Identity 101 program, which is going to provide you with some information regarding culturally responsive teaching practices, anti-racist pedagogy, classroom management, lesson planning, time management, and all the other intricacies of the teaching craft. So if you are somebody who's looking for some credits towards your teaching license, this is the program for you. It's self-paced and you don't need a rush for anybody. So it's on your time. So make sure you book a call with us at calendly.com/identitytalk4educators. And those are our announcements. Now let's get to this main event. So when we do this podcast, Identity Talk, it's not just about the classroom teachers. There are other educators that are within the realm who do this work as well. So we're talking about community activists. We're talking about paraprofessionals. We're talking about even our teaching assistants. They all do their educating in their own shape or form. So today, we're doing a special School Librarians edition of the podcast. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time because at the end of the day, our school librarians, our media specialists within our K-12 schools, they don't always get the love that they deserve, and they do so much within our schools, and they play an intricate role in what we do as educators as far as how they support us and our students. So I wanted to bring on three phenomenal ladies who are all school librarians, media specialists, and they do so much more than that. So you're going to be excited to hear from all three of them, all of whom I follow on social media, and they all do phenomenal work. So let's get into this conversation. Without further ado, I want to bring on Casey, Sandra, and Forrest, and they're going to introduce themselves and just share what they do within their respective schools and communities. So let's get started. Hello, ladies.
Hi. How are you?
I am doing phenomenal. How are y'all doing?
Just great.
Wonderful.
Yes. So I'm so excited to finally do a whole librarian episode for this podcast. So yeah, let's go right in because there's so much to talk about. So first thing I want to know is just tell us a little bit about yourself and what ultimately brought you into the librarian media specialist field, each of you. So we can just go clockwise. So we'll go ahead and start with Forrest.
Well, I first began my library career truly as a scholar. I always spent most of my time in a library in a neutral learning environment, and exploring and enjoying and exercising my independence was truly a part of developing that passion for research and reading. And through reading, I've been able to explore the world. And I want to create and cultivate that same experience for others. And so working in a public library specifically a special research library, the Auburn Avenue Research Library here in Atlanta, Georgia, I've truly hit the ground running as the library's collection reflects its community. And I enjoy providing not only access to Black and people of color, community, history, heritage, and also that literature. It's truly been a passion of mine.
Awesome. All right, Sandra.
So I have been a teacher librarian at 3 public high schools for the last 3 years. And prior to that, I was a classroom teacher teaching English and AVID for 15 years. And being a librarian was something kind of that I always thought was going to be like my sunset, like right before retirement. When I was burnt out of teaching, I was like, I know, then eventually end up in the library. And I wasn't burnt out on teaching 3 years ago. It was just an opportunity arose and I decided to go for it. And while I was really, really sad to leave my students in the classroom and all of my colleagues that I work really closely with, I feel like this is the job for me. This is the career for me. And I actually am kind of sad that I didn't come to it sooner.
Awesome. All right, Casey.
I am about to end my 23rd year working as a school librarian. I graduated from college, first started working in corporate America. And when my position stalled, my late father jumped in and said, hey, I think you should really pursue this. Now, both my parents are teachers. And when you are a child of a teacher, that's like the last thing you want to do. So what happened was I went back to school and got my first job on the south side of Chicago. Absolutely loved it. And I haven't looked back ever since. So I've been fortunate. I've worked in 3 school districts, Chicago, East St. Louis, and now I'm in the District of Columbia Public Schools. And I love it. And I'm a middle school librarian again. So it's been great.
Wow.
Awesome. And I forgot to mention this. So we have Forrest Evans, who's based in Atlanta. And we have Sandra. Is it Albini or Albini?
Albini.
Albini. Sandra Albini, who is out in California. Bay Area? Or what part?
Yeah, I'm in San Jose.
San Jose. And then we have Casey Boyd, who is down in the DMV area, more specifically Washington, D.C., but she is Chi-Town born and raised. All right. So I want to make sure people know where you are at geographically. But I have a question regarding just the training you all go through, because a lot of people feel like school librarians are just like babysitters. You know, they just come into your library, they pick out books, they read, and you just watch them. But you all go through extensive training, extensive academic training. So I want people to understand that you have to get actual degrees. You have to take specific exams in order to become librarians and media specialists in schools. So can you describe to us some of the specific training that you all had to go through in order to become librarians, as far as getting licensure and the different assessments you have to take? So whoever wants to go ahead.
Well, I believe I'm probably one of the most recent grads in the group. I earned my MLIS, Master's of Information and Library Science, in 2016 from the University of Alabama. And as many of us in the discussion of, there are many programs throughout the country provide a great range of information, but an MLIS program is one of the greatest avenues in order to pursue your librarian career professionally, as there are, if I'm not mistaken, less than 50 programs in the country. And outside of obtaining your master's degree in MLIS, you definitely want to have a specific niche or a area that you'd like to invest in. For me, I knew I wanted to work with the general public, so I necessarily did not want to go towards academic or to the educational traditional environment. So I wanted to work with more public environments, and I definitely wanted to work in a special collections, which is why during my graduate career, I definitely wanted to have a lot of archival preservation class, technical experience and training, so that way I could have a flexibility to go from librarianship to archival.
All right, awesome. Casey, go ahead.
Sure. I earned what's called a media certificate from the state of Illinois. And what that means is that I am certified to teach in a K-12 environment. Because I had previous master's degrees, I was also given endorsements by my state at that time. The interesting thing about this is that some of the requirements are vary from state to state, but for the most part, the Master's of Library and Information Science degree is necessary for you to obtain the school library positions. And it provides a lot of information in terms of, we understand every core curricular area across the board in the school, and that's what sometimes gets overlooked and kind of missed. So I can float in to a science class or a math class. I can also float in and support special education, and I can provide resources and teaching support. And that's what's the important thing to remember, is that our training is K-12. We service everyone in the building and our teachers.
Awesome.
So in California, we don't need to have the master's in library and information science in order to be a teacher librarian. We only need the California credential. However, if you take 2 years of the credential classes, it's just an additional year to get the MLIS, which is what I have. And I just graduated on Friday, so I think I beat Forrest by a couple of years. And for me, it was just like, it's just another year, right? But it was also meaningful to me because I felt like I was not encouraged to get the master's by my superiors, I guess I would say, the higher ups. They were kind of like, well, you know, you don't really need it necessarily. Looking at the numbers and the demographics, only 7% of MLIS holders in the United States identify as Latinx. And so I was like, well, why not? Why can't I get it? And it kind of, for me, opened up more career possibilities in the future. So that's why I went ahead and got the master's in addition to the credential.
And just for clarity for our listeners, MLIS, does that stand for media, like librarian information services?
Close. It's Masters of Library and Information Science.
There you go. 2 out of 4.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I will take that.
And I'm glad you followed your first mind, Sandra, and you went on and got that master's, because just making yourself valuable just in your district is not good enough. I feel that you need to go for the moon, get as many certifications as you can. So I'm glad you did it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And this is a perfect segue into the next question, because I know, Sandra, you were originally an English teacher, if I'm not mistaken, before you transitioned into librarianship. So I know that being school librarians, part of the job is to recommend specific books to students. Maybe if they're doing a book report, or if they're doing a unit or a lesson for a particular class. But I'm more interested in knowing, like, what other skills that students are learning from you all when they do come to your library, whether it's virtually or within the brick and mortar, because I don't think people are always clear about the role that you all play within your school communities. So I want to give you all an opportunity to just share exactly what skills students are receiving from you all when you provide the knowledge and the wisdom that you share with them.
I can jump in. I'm going to really try and be real short, but to the point, because I'm very passionate about this question. Look, we are the jack of all trades in your building. We support everything, anything and everything that's taking place. Okay, so I'll give you a good example. It's obvious that we, of course, it's information literacy. It is literacy, period. Getting reluctant readers reading, helping struggling readers, supporting all of our classes across the board, whether it be for research or just inquiry. But I also do digital citizenship, which is extremely important right now with the tremendous amount of online activities that these kids are participating in, whether it be on social media or just gaming. That is a big issue with kids, is that they are being confronted with people, and how do you just behave online appropriately. And last, I would say, just to close out, is that we have a community meeting every week with our students. And my school is located blocks away from the Capitol building. So when the insurrection of those fools went down on January 6th, okay, our kids were really like, what the is going on? We got DC kids, so they were gonna be like, what the is going on? And then the second part of it was they were confused. The third was it was personal. Many of my students, their parents worked at the Capitol building in various capacities. Some were very nervous because they hadn't heard from their parents for hours. And they were wondering what was going on. The parent was so busy, they couldn't even stop and text because they were so busy dealing with the nonsense around the Capitol building. So that being said, we had a community meaning a assembly, and it was virtual because we were virtual at the time. And what we did is we just brought the kids together, and I had supporting material, research, things that they could read, things that also helped them process what they were experiencing. This is also going into social and emotional learning, which is bibliotherapy reading that is supportive of our students when they experience trauma like this. So we do much more than just check out the books. We do a lot, heck of a lot more, and we respond to real-time information and things that take place in our buildings.
Awesome. Or Sandra, whoever.
We are the safe adults outside of the classroom that have the ability to speak to kids about things that they're interested in, or that they're curious about, or that they need resources about, that has nothing to do with their grades or their academic performance or anything like that. We just see them for like their outside interests, their hobbies, what they're really passionate about, or what they're afraid of. Like what Casey was saying, she had resources available because she anticipated that their needs were what their information needs were going to be with all of this nonsense going around. And classroom teachers don't necessarily have the time or the resources to do that. So we do that. We step into that role. And I feel like it's a very important but overlooked role, in that kids are kind of just trained to be like, okay, I go to class and I get an A, and teachers will reach out to me if there's a problem. But there shouldn't necessarily need to be a problem for a kid to reach out and say, I'm just really curious about this, or I just don't understand this thing. Like I have depression. I need to know more about it. Where do I go? Who can I trust to help me? And like I said, classroom teachers aren't necessarily, they don't have the time or the resources to do that or fill that need for them.
Ooh, I definitely want to add to that as well. Similar to what Sandra said, as a public librarian working in a public sector, I continue the work in the community. And so collaboration is essential for my library as we assist patrons to refine their research skills and also to truly sharpen their reading fluency. And similar to what Sandra said in KC, it's also their interest that helps us to articulately and discernibly help them to utilize what's their passion so they can hit the ground running, whether it be to find a resource to rehabilitate their mental health or to navigate certain emotions. And so that's why I love providing that additional assistance outside of traditional environments that are specifically for education. And so it allows me to meet patrons where they are and to allow them to come back utilizing the refined skills that helps to articulate their independence.
And people, you heard this. So it's not just about, hey, let's check out books, let's catalog books, which are all duties that come with the job, but there's so much more. And we're just scratching the surface. So this next question is a very important one that I'm interested in knowing from you all. And I want to start with Sandra with this one, and then Forrest and Casey, you all can follow. So given that there's been so much conversation around culturally relevant and anti-racist pedagogy and learning, what I'm interested in knowing is, what role do school librarians play in helping educators and school leaders build these culturally relevant and anti-racist learning environments that they say they want for their students? Because, and I'm only asking this because we have a lot of books. There are a lot of textbooks out there that are outdated, that misinform our students. And sometimes the media, as you mentioned earlier, Casey, can sometimes influence our students' thinking in a negative way if we don't vet the actual sources, whether they're primary or even secondary sources on the internet. So I just want to know, how do you all support teachers and school leaders in helping students build in those capacities?
Well, for me, I just think that it's really funny when, you know, schools talk about anti-racism and all these things, right? Like they want to build anti-racist curriculum. pedagogies, and yet like they have no librarians, or they only have white librarians, and they only have white leaders. For us as advocates, as library advocates, in my district, we have 26,000 students, and 15,000 of those students identify as Latino or Latinx, and I'm the only one who is a librarian who identifies as Latinx. So it's like there's already right there a discrepancy. And also the fact that we only have 4 librarians in our district, and I feel like that already makes a statement about what our district deems as a priority, a financial priority for students of color and their literacy, and thinking that it's not really important to have a library because kids don't read, or maybe kids of color don't read. And if they don't read well, we're just going to give them more classes to help them read better, and give them more textbooks and give them more worksheets. And it's just this way of thinking towards, like passing a test and meeting these certain standards, rather than looking at a kid and seeing their fluency and seeing their literacy for what it is, and what they're interested in doesn't necessarily match up with what's going to be taught in the textbooks. So for me, I have been focusing on trying to decolonize my library and trying to figure out what that means. When I walked into one of my libraries, well, we're called the school mascot is the 76ers. And so in my library, there's this huge mural of George Washington, some kind of famous painting crossing something. We're not going to glorify people who, men who enslaved people. That's got to go. So we got rid of that right away, because that's like, we're not doing that anymore. And a lot of my students were like, oh, did you ask? Like, did you get permission? Permission from who? This is my library. And we're not doing this anymore. We're not glorifying colonizers. And then I took a look at our collection, and I see like the majority of authors that we have are 90% white authors. Well, that's got to change too. And so it's us looking at our collections, looking at our communities, looking at our campuses, and figuring out, what do we as librarians who are school leaders, how do we figure out our role in and our voice in changing this narrative? And also, just because, like I said before, I think we just have a little bit more time to research. And so I've been doing a lot of the research for educators who want to start building anti-racist curriculum. And so I've been recommending a lot of those professional development books to my staff and trying to build trust with them, so that way they can take my recommendations to heart and like take the time to read some good quality work.
Quick follow-up question. How much say do you have in determining what book selections are included in the library?
For me, I have 100%. Nobody tells me what to order or what not to order. I just have to be prepared if a student or parent or community member wants to challenge a book that I have.
All right. Fair enough.
Well, for myself, I'm at a special research library, and there are only 3 in existence that highlight and celebrate African American culture and history. The Strawberry Center in New York, which is the largest. The second, the Auburn Avenue, which is my library in Atlanta. And the third is in Miami. And one way to cultivate an anti-racist curriculum and also collection is not only to maintain a neutral learning environment, but through our selection and acquisitions for collection development. As I wholeheartedly believe, a library's collection reflects its community. And not only through our policies that support how we conduct our collection development procedures, but also how we satisfy patrons' interests so that they can be reflected on the shelves, and also how we support them through certain programming. Through bibliographic instruction, we provide additional research classes. So not only can students within any age range or competencies can gain insight that they did not believe or unbeknownst to them knew existed. And so my library, I believe, is not only a great resource, but it also supports those in academic libraries, special libraries, and school libraries. And so again, I continue that support in the community. And so that's why collaboration is very essential, because my library is right across the street from a higher education institution, Georgia State. And not only do we serve and provide support to higher education circles, but also all avenues of education, middle grades, early, even down to special, and even private and independent. And so it's important that not only representation, because not only does Atlanta Fulton is the largest county in the state of Georgia, but we also have the largest historically representation of people of color in librarianship. In my one branch, every librarian is a person of color. And that is that's a blessing to say. And I enjoy that because we also have subject librarians, which specifically hone in specific disciplines so patrons can go to an individual librarian and have that one-on-one, which is essential because patrons need to be seen and heard, not only with a book, but with a staff in front of them.
Well, I feel that as a woman of color, I have a responsibility, and I have a responsibility to service, in particular, children of color. I'm gonna always service kids, but I'm always going to have that extra eye out for children of color because I know that they oftentimes get the shorter end of the stick in the K-12 arena. And you do need those advocates that are in place that will look out for those kids, that will speak up for them, and will say, hey, we need these resources. But librarians can do a lot of different things beyond the classroom. And example I can use recently is something I did in coming to my school. I observed that my staff was in need of diversity and equity and inclusion training. And I had experienced it in a previous district, and it was very beneficial to me because I look at the bigger picture is that if we're not treating each other as adults properly, you know what's going on with kids. Okay. And that was first and foremost concerned about is that there was a disconnect in our building. And I'm not here to talk about my staff members negatively, but I think that there was a level of we need to try and talk a little more effectively towards each other and understand each other's backgrounds. And when we do that, it makes it easier for us to work with the kids. We were fortunate to have Dr. Enid Lee come out and do, and she's still doing a lot of sessions with us. So I call myself the parent whisperer, the child whisperer, everybody whisperer. In other words, if I see something that is going to benefit kids or just the community of the schools that I work in, I go in and book an appointment with my principal. His eyes are rolling in the back of his head. He's like, oh Lord, here comes Miss Boyd again. But he knows that when I'm coming to him and talking to him about something, it's serious and he needs to at least, sit and listen and consider it heavily. There's some things that he has not, and that's his right because he is the instructional leader of the building. But I would say 75% of the things that I've recommended to him and saying that it's not personal, it's something I'm seeing that would make us be better, he has listened to. So I do all the same what Forrest and Sandra said, which is I make sure that I have books that represent all of my students, not my Black students, that's my Muslim, my West African, my Jewish kids, my Korean kids, everybody. So everybody represented. So I'm really quick to find out if a child, what background this child, cultural background this child is from. I make sure that child's background is represented in the books that I select.
And let's stay on that for a second because I have here 3 librarians, but there are also 3 women of color today, right? I mean, Forrest, you are a queer Black woman of color.
That is correct.
Sandra, Latinx, but you have indigenous roots. And then KC, just a strong Black woman, right?
Blue black.
Blue black. So look, no, for real. But look, so I was trying to look for statistics before this conversation, and what I did find out is for every 5 librarians, 4 of them approximately are going to be white. So we're talking approximately 80%. Maybe 80% people are librarians, but then if you look at teachers, you look at librarian assistants who are white, that percentage is actually higher. So the fact is there's very few women of color in the library media specialist profession. But I also want to focus on the intersectionality that you all come into the field with, right? So what I want to know is, and this is a 2-part question. Number 1, how do you sense your intersectionality as women of color as librarians of color? And then also, how does racism and sexism and homophobia and other forms of discrimination manifest themselves within your field? Because I know it exists. So yeah, let's keep it a buck.
I can go first just because I have a recent experience that happened to me, in library school. Last year, I was taking a class on collections and just developing the collection that we have. And I wrote an essay about how it was really important for me to develop collections for students, well, for all students, but just collections in different languages. And I didn't say specifically Spanish, or I think I was actually focusing on my Vietnamese students. In San Jose, we have a large Asian community, and the majority of my students that I work with are Latino, or the second biggest majority is my Asian population. And so I was specifically discussing Vietnamese and Chinese languages, and my professor's comments on the essay were to say that she didn't understand why Hispanic parents don't require their children to learn English only, and that when they did not require their children to learn English, that they were putting them at a disadvantage, and it was also costing the education system and library system too much money to supply materials in other languages. And I was just like, yeah, right. I was devastated. This is a professor who is basically saying that no, it needs to be English only. And who cares? It's just about money. It hurt me. I shared it with some people that I feel safe with, and, I did complain, but it was just like, this is the attitude that we have that we're up against. It's kind of like, well, it costs too much to reach kids in their native languages, so we're just not going to do it. It needs to be English only. So if these are the attitudes that our professors are currently holding, this is why we need to be here. This is why we need to demand for more professors of color and just more librarians of color, because we need to push back. So that's my that's my little spiel about that. But also in terms of being able to provide resources that reflect students, to be able to provide spaces that are available to everyone, and to say, I like, for example, I hold the GSA, the Gender Sexualities Alliance Club meetings in my library, because I want that community to see and to know that they are welcome. They're always welcome in my library. I have the signs posted everywhere that hate speech is not tolerated, but I need to show it. I need to be the role model. I need to demonstrate my support for all my students.
Wow, and you're in California, and what I know about California is y'all just pushed an ethnic studies curriculum just recently. Y'all just got that approved, but it took a lot of years of fighting to even get to that point, and yet there's still some inner conflict taking place within different communities in your state. So to hear that comment from your professor is just disheartening, but it just gives more reason why we need to have ethnic studies. We need to focus on critical race theory, which is another big topic of conversation in our nation. I digress, because I can't stand white supremacist talk, but that's just another story for another day. I see your mic open, Forrest.
Oh, okay. So it is no secret that librarianship has traditionally been and continues to be a profession dominated by whiteness. However, a major contributor as to how whiteness has been normalized in librarianship is that whiteness has played a part in the fundamental role of the profession. Public libraries in the United States developed innately as a site for cultural assimilation and Americanization of not only immigrants, but various people of color communities. And thankfully, our governance organization, ALA, and also BLA, and other specific organizations that highlight and celebrate Indigenous and various people of color communities and cultures are present to go through not only checks and balances, but to make sure that there are proper governance policies and also circulations of information on how to professionally and accurately address, support, and also acknowledge the needs of these communities. And similar to ALA, my library has modeled our communities and committees that support not only LGBTQ immigration services and needs, but also English as a second language and a range of services. And so through that cultivation of having committees, we're able to discern strengths of our staffs so they can then pair them with the needs of our community so that way we can meet in the middle. So that way all needs are met and strengths are utilized as well.
You know, sometimes people don't know who they're getting when they see my name. They don't know if I'm black, white, or if I'm male or female, you know. So I'm more of a storyteller. So I'll just share this quick story with you. I do a lot of speaking at conferences and at public events, and I was booked to speak and at an ALA event. And I purposely showed up a little early because I wanted to see the room, and also the previous presenters were wrapping up. I came in, sat in the back of the room, and when you go to these conferences, they always have water in the back of the room, right? Woman walked up to me and said, "Oh, is it possible you can get us some more water?" And I said, you know, and I'm a jokester, as y'all know already. So I'm gonna have some fun with this woman. So I went out, flagged somebody down. They came in, got the water. I went over to her. Oh, they're bringing the water in. Okay. Sat down. And then the next session began where I was keynoting, and they called me up to the stage. As I looked out in the audience, I was trying to find her. She turned every shade of purple. I was trying to slide up underneath the chair and everything, but she realized who she was talking to. But see, that's the point I'm making, is that there's assumptions about us that we are library assistants. We are the secretary for a library director. We are also, when we get called into panels, that we got to have that black speaker to come on and speak. I get that a lot. Also, too, it's a negative form of how the types of things that we're called to speak on. Only social justice. Yeah, I speak a lot about social justice, but there's a lot more to my areas of expertise: technology, curriculum writing, advocacy. It goes on and on and on. So our peers in the field have a lot to work to do themselves. They need to take a step back, and they need to be more respectful of us as women of color, men of color that are coming into the field, that are making a difference. And in the long run, we could all learn from one another if everyone would kind of calm down and stop the behavior. It's tough coming in this field and it's majority white, because they want you to assimilate to their way of how things are done. And I've never been that type of librarian. I do it the KC way. Okay. Because my thing is that I've always serviced kids living in poverty. And so I have a totally different lens than a suburban librarian when I'm at work. And when we sometimes I clash with those librarians when we're in different conferences and meetings and so forth. And that's where you, for me, as a Black librarian, female librarian that has serviced kids living in poverty, but it has lived in suburbia. So I know that rhetoric that they're talking, it's about you taking a stand on behalf of your children and your community. That's my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, that's definitely real. So since we're talking about responsibility and accountability, this is a perfect follow-up question for everybody. So with regard to our white school librarians, your white colleagues in the field, right? What role should they play in advocating for racial equity, but also diversity within your field? Because if we have a population of 80+% white in your field, they have to play a role in this. And I mean, that could be said for any industry, you know, particularly our classroom teachers. But since we're talking about librarians, what should our white school librarians be doing specifically to help in that cause?
I can answer that one real quick. Look, first and foremost, I need allies and co-conspirators, and I need plotters. Okay, because this is hard, tough work that we're doing, because we're trying to fight a system that has been doing things in a very antiquated way in the K-12 arena of education. So we have to take different approaches to reach our children specifically. What I would appreciate from my white colleagues is that don't assume Believe me when I tell you, share stories with you. Believe me when I say some experiences I've had, or how things are done, or think how this culture is not responding to your white dominance. And believe me when I say it. And last but not least is that I do need co-conspirators and allies, but do not speak for me. Do not speak for me. I can speak for myself. It's a pet peeve of mine in meetings sometimes with white librarians, and I will say something, and then a white librarian will come behind me and say, well, what Casey's trying to say, and see, you say that makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And I'm like, hold up, partner. I can speak for myself. Okay. You don't need to further digest this for them. If they need me to explain it a different way, I have the words to do so. Sit down over here, just listen. So I have a lot of people that follow me on social media, white, black, across the spectrum. My thing is that we all gonna be respectful on my page, and you can learn something, because I do bring a lot to my page that is very culturally diverse. But my thing is that pay attention and be quiet and just let it sink in and learn, instead of pushing your agenda forward.
I would say that, like for me, I would not be in this position if I didn't have white allies already looking out for me and trying to encourage me to take on this position. And so I'm thankful for them. And I'm thankful for the white librarians that I had growing up, who were welcoming of every student and encouraging them to use the space and not see things as like kids don't read or kids of color don't read. Spaces were always available to everybody. However, I would say that we all need to push people in positions of power to put their money where their mouth is. Whenever I hear like, this is our organization's anti-racist or our land acknowledgement statements, okay, I'm gonna follow that up with, what is your plan of action to hire more people of color for leadership positions? Or where are your indigenous people on your board? Because you say your land acknowledgement and they say, oh, where is everyone from? Whose land are you on? And that's like all like supposed to be cute. But tell me, what are you doing with your money to balance things out? And to that end, I am really involved in the California School Library Association. And one of the reasons why I am is because they gave me a scholarship for specifically for librarians of color to continue their education. And so that made me want to join their committee. And so our committee's purpose is to encourage the amount of California librarians of color and to network and to collaborate and to change things within our organization. But again, I'm like, okay, we need more scholarships. We need to put the money to specific communities so that way we get more librarians that reflect the populations that we serve. So that's where I think allies can get involved in if they feel like they need to learn about anti-racism. And a lot of people are saying that they're listening and they're learning, but they also need to do something. And for me, it's like, if you can't do anything else, you give your money to scholarships.
Yep.
I just wanted to add something very small, because both Casey and Sandra have just shared some wonderful insight. In addition to following up, it's important to actively listen, because that creates a neutral space to amplify voices that may not have a safe space to be heard or seen. And in that process, you're able to learn from your mistakes and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Progress, as I mention all the time, is not linear. And similar to conducting your work for your mental health, you can utilize the same methodology to conduct the work for your academic research to elevate to your highest self. And this allows you to speak up not only efficiently, but accurately in your own social circles. So as not only as a person of privilege, but you may have access to certain social circles that Black, Indigenous, and other people of color do not. And perhaps when you hear a derogatory language or a certain rhetoric, instead of it continuing outside the conversation, these are areas where you can utilize those skills that you obtain in a library or with a library professional that can assist you with growing as a person.
Yeah, this is all true right here. Everybody has to do more, even our stakeholders. And one thing that we need to address, and this is going to be my last question before the lightning round, is the fact that when budget cuts happen in our school districts, for some odd reason, it seems like our art teachers, music teachers, our school librarians, our social workers are always among the first to be laid off. But since we're talking about school librarians, I have to ask this question, and this is probably one of the most important questions that need to be answered by stakeholders and school districts. So I found a statistic, and I can't remember the source, but basically it said between the years of 2009 and 2016, more than 9,000 full-time school librarian positions were eliminated from the United States. That was over a 7-year span. We're in 2021. I'm pretty sure that number has increased since then. So what I'm trying to figure out is, given the overwhelming amount of importance that you all have shared about the librarian position and what you do in schools, why is it that there's this decline taking place still in so many of our school districts nationwide? And I know KC is happening in DC, because I've been following it. I've been following the news about DC's particularly. I know it's happening in other cities, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and start, because I know you got some things to say about that. Why is this happening?
Woo child. That's what I'm gonna start off by. Start this off. Woo child is something else. It's a combination of a number of things, but the ones that really I can speak on very quickly is there's a lack of understanding in terms of the skill base of the librarian. A lot of our superintendents and central office employees are completing education leadership and certificate programs for superintendency. They're graduating out these programs, and there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion around ancillary programs, including library programs, and how they can really impact student achievement. So that's a big issue. They talk about special ed because there's laws associated, but there aren't any laws associated with having a school librarian. So when you have this person that is in a leadership role in your district, and they really don't have an understanding of the library program, or they never had really a positive library experience, then it's expendable. Okay. The second part is there is a rush, especially in our Title I districts, to get the scores up, get the kids' scores up. I totally get it. In this rush, they want to add programs, and they feel that programs are really the answer for student achievement, to improve test scores. And we all know on this call that that's not necessarily the case. If we want to get our kids reading and becoming more acclimated in reading, it's a village effect. We have to get the parents involved so they turn the idiot box off, and as well as the games off. Then the second part is imploring 30 minutes a day of reading, at least 30 minutes. It makes a huge difference. I'm seeing this in my household with my the kids that are in this household. These are the little things that happen, and this is one of the reasons why we become so expendable, because it's like, okay, we can get rid of them, we can bring a program in, and now the scores will boost. And then they realize that that's not the answer, and in the meantime, the scores in the district have tanked. Case in point, Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles Unified, and Chicago Public Schools. I rest my case. They got rid of librarians. Look at their reading scores, have tanked ever since then.
You ain't lying. I used to live in Philadelphia, so those are absolute facts that you're breaking down.
Now, I am definitely an outsider on this question, but I definitely am a supporter of my school librarians. And I hope that with the discernment of public administrators, that they're able to see not only duality, but the benefit, and how not only do librarians support the reading, but the passions of students. And that in order to increase these reading scores and to satisfy state standards, as school librarians also have certain state standards to also satisfy, but it's important to include them in that number for the next year physical. So I'm looking forward to see how the new coming of the school year, post-COVID, how things will plateau.
Awesome.
Yeah, to what Forrest said, I don't think that The people who make decisions are really concerned about long-term literacy or long-term learning or lifelong learning. I think they are really focused on getting kids to pass a test and doing whatever is cheap, whatever is quick in order to supply the numbers that they need for the state. At least that's been my experience. And I just spoke with some people at my district, some administrators last week, and they were talking about creating additional support classes for English language learners, but yet they won't invest in libraries and librarians. There are 13 schools, huge schools in my district. They're all high schools, and we only have 4 librarians. So that means we have to rotate. And that means that most kids don't have a school librarian available to them most of the week. And what happens is kids don't get the chance to use it as a resource, and they just operate outside of the library. So whereas they might have gone to the library before, now they can't depend on it, so they can go elsewhere. And I think it's also just this belief that students don't read and that they don't see the library as a place of knowledge and a source of information for other things and other learning and community building and skill building. They kind of just see it as like a book museum. And our collections are growing, they're living, they're always changing and evolving with the needs of the students. And I think that a lot of people have this antiquated view of what we do. And like Casey said, like our skills are not limited to books. Our skills are connecting with students in the classroom about digital literacy and using other sources of technology. And we're, in my district, very underutilized and underappreciated.
But this doesn't make any sense to me because, Casey mentions the fact that, and I know this for a fact, part of the reason why these cuts happen is because they're trying to create positions for those testing subjects, whether it's math, whether it's literacy, or even science, because that's also a testing subject, not to the same degree as math and literacy. But given that literacy is one of the testing subjects, and as librarians, you support literary training with students, it just doesn't make sense to me how they would lay off librarians, given the fact that you can support in the literary development of students. I can't understand that part. So, yeah, so I'm just speechless.
You talk a good game to the parents that we're this literacy rich district or school, and then you don't fund it. I mean, yeah, it's a game that's being played. And it takes parents to really go downtown and complain at the school board meetings and hearings for things to really change in the long run.
Yeah, but that has to change for sure. Well, I could talk to y'all ladies all day. I really could, because we're just scratching the surface with this conversation, and you all just need to be centered more. And I've been saying this, for a minute. I was in a school where we had a school librarian who was like my second mother. Black woman, been there for 30 years at the same school, but she was just relegated to doing lunch duty and doing the ZRA assessments for students. Like, she wasn't even given the time to do her own job as far as making sure the library is in good shape and doing the things that you all described in this conversation. So this is something that really hits me, in a different way, because like I know how a lot of you all get mistreated in your respective schools, and it's just not right. We gotta do better.
But I think it's important that we have to be patient with people, because there's a Bible verse that talks about how God, please forgive them for what they do not know. Please forgive them for their behavior. And that's how I kind of apply it in that sense, a biblical sense, that sometimes we have colleagues that are not treating us the best, and it does anger me, but I have to find a way to remain calm and educate them instead and be patient. And sometimes that can be hard. I
can't even imagine. But But we're approaching the hour, and I want to transition to our lightning round to wrap things up. Because with all the work you are doing, you have to be prioritizing self-care. You have to prioritize self-care for sure. So that's going to be my first question, and we'll go in this order. We'll start with Sandra, then Forrest, then KC. What do you all do for self-care? What's that go-to self-care activity for you all?
Okay, I'll be honest. Well, I live near wine country, so I like going wine tasting with my friends. Most of my all work at the schools together, so we just like need to vent and have some fun. And shopping, I'm really trying to be better, but it's just retail therapy and cooking and trying new restaurants.
Awesome.
Okay. For myself, because I do believe rest is revolutionary, and not all women have to be strong. Softness is also a strength. And so I not only rest, but I repurpose certain anxious and negative energy by dancing. So that's why you see me dance on your feed, because when I record myself dancing in the stacks, that's literally me decompressing, because professionals are people too. And we navigate emotions in difficult situations. And sometimes I need a minute just to dance.
For me, what I do is I really enjoy family time, especially with the littles here in the house. And I like to do a lot of planning of house plants and everything. And of course, reading and crafting. And last but not least, trying out new recipes.
Awesome. What's the most recent recipe you just tried to cook?
It would be orange ginger chicken. Trying something different and new.
Ooh.
Yeah, orange ginger
good.
chicken.
That sounds good, right? Shoot, ship me some. Ship some to Ethiopia. Listen. All right. So here's the your favorite question, the one that I'm dying to hear your responses to. And Forrest, I'll let you start us off. If you all were on a stranded island and you only had 2 books with you, what will be the titles of those books? 2 books.
Oh, so easy. It would have to be Black Girl Call Home by Jasmine Mann, and of course, The Prophet by Robert Jones Jr. That is a brilliantly crafted title. The way he illustrates the New and Old Testament, and also just the diet. It's brilliant. You have to read that. You have to read both titles. They're just brilliant.
Well, yeah, say that real quick.
Oh yes, I'm the reader where if I like something, regardless of its length or the genre, whether it's a novella, a graphic novel, I'll reread it, or I'll listen to the audio tape either in the car, so that way I get another tone, another perspective and lens in my mind. Because even when I read something, I hear my tone and how I comprehend the book. When I hear the author or someone else reading it, there are certain aspects that just resonate or come to the surface for me. And so that's a book I've recently reread, and I've enjoyed it.
All right, true. All right. So what do you think, Casey? I know this was a tough question for you, but I'm interested to hear what you got.
From one spectrum to the other, the Bible. That's one. It keeps me grounded and rooted and encouraged. But the other is I love Beverly Jenkins romance novels, and Indigo is my favorite one. I can read that over and over and over again. It's love, it's adventure, it's historical, Black historical reading. I just love it. So those are my 2 favorites.
For me, this was also a very, very difficult question because unlike Forrest, I don't like to reread books all that much. So I was trying to think of one that had like everything, like a little bit of romance and a little bit of comedy. So and history. So one that I chose was Reign of Gold by Victor Villaseñor. And I guess my second book would be something about surviving on a deserted island. So I could survive.
Cool. And just curious, what's your reservations for not wanting to reread a book?
I think it's also just why, like, when I travel, I don't necessarily like to go back to the same place because I feel like it's short and you got to try new things when you can. And it's also like something the pandemic has taught me, like, go places. You don't feel that great, or you're having a bad hair day, or you feel fat in your clothes, whatever. Just go. Just like when you have the opportunity to do something, hang out with your friends, make memories. 2019 was a great year for me because a lot of things happened with my kids and good things. Like we had a lot of good trips that we took, and we went to a lot of concerts. We were having lots of fun. And then 2020, we were on lockdown, so I kept telling my daughters, like, I'm so glad we spent so much time traveling in 2019 and doing things when we could, because now we have those memories to keep us going through 2020.
Sweet, sweet. And there's 3 of you all today, which means that the dinner table is going to be a lot bigger than usual. So my next question is, if you can invite 6 people total, so each of you can invite 2 influential figures that are alive to dinner, who would your 2 individuals be for each of you?
For me, I would have to say Muhammad Ali and Audre Lorde.
Nice.
For me, I will say my late father, because he was a great educator, influencer, and the radical Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes. Yes.
I guess I would say the first 2 names that popped in my head were Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou. And I think that just they had so much to give, a wealth of knowledge to learn from, and I think I could probably just ask them questions forever.
Yeah.
Wow, that table's gonna be live. Woo. Audre Lorde, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou on the same table. Come on. Yeah.
And Muhammad Ali, don't forget him.
Muhammad Ali. I mean, that table gonna be live. Oh my goodness. Yes. And then, I'm gonna throw in an extra question, and this will close us out. If there's a woman or even a young man who's aspiring to become a school librarian, what word of advice would you give to that person who's aspiring to do what you are doing?
Seek out a mentor. You're going to need it. Mentorship is very important in this field. You're a person of color.
Nice.
I wholeheartedly second that. Wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with that. And I would say seek out scholarships and don't give up.
All right, there it is, y'all. So Casey, Sandra, Forrest, thank you all so much for coming on to talk to me about the world of librarianship. This has been very educational for myself, and I hope it was educational for our viewers and listeners. So thank you all for what you all do. And if you all could take a moment to just share how people can contact you and follow you on social media to support what you all are doing, that'd be awesome, because we love what you all do.
Oh. Okay, well, this is Forrest, Favorite Librarian. You can access or contact me at Instagram, Favorite Librarian, or on my website, favoritelibrarian.com. This has been wonderful, and I've enjoyed you all.
Awesome. Sandra?
Thank you for having me. I feel honored to be among such influential people, not only on Instagram, but that's how I came across all of you. So I'm really grateful to be in your presence. And if anyone wants to contact me, I am on Instagram at Hood Librarian.
All right, KC, finish us off.
I wish I could have had that IG name. I just wanted to tell you that. I love that IG name.
But you're the boss, Casey. You're the boss.
Yes, the boss.
I love Hood Librarian. I wish I could have taken that one, but you got it. That's okay. You can find me on my website, caseyboyd.com. And I am boss_librarian on all platforms: YouTube, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, y'all. So let's make sure we support our school librarians. And if you have one at your school, make sure you show love to that person because they don't get enough love. I'm just going to keep saying that. So let's make sure we do more to support them, especially if your school district has maybe budget cuts coming. Let's advocate and do what we can to keep our librarians in our schools. So I'm going to just end it with that. Ladies, thank you so much again. And I wish you all good rest of the day with your families and your loved ones.
Thank you, Kwame. Thank you, everyone. It's been fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, enjoy your weekend.
All right, y'all.
Okay.
All right. So we're about to end another episode of Identity Talk Educators Live. Hopefully you all learned a lot about the world of school librarianship. I know I did. So we got another one coming next week. So as I always tell you all, until next time, I wish you all good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.